Welcome to this channel dedicated to exploring marital fidelity and the profound consequences of betrayal when one spouse strays from the other. If you, like me, uphold true family values and firmly oppose infidelity, consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. Let's dive into today's story. It was a tranquil Monday evening, the clock inching towards 7:30. I had been buried in an intense project in my home office, still wrestling with the mountain of unfinished tasks. Deciding it was time to call it a day, I wandered into the softly illuminated kitchen. Opening the fridge, I grabbed a chilled bottle of my favorite Indian Pale Ale, took a long sip, and let my gaze wander. That's when I saw her. Joy was seated on the outdoor sofa near the fire pit and pool, her legs tucked beneath her as she chatted animatedly on her phone. I thought about stepping outside to join her, but hesitated when I noticed her familiar habit, twirling a strand of her blonde hair around her fingers. It was a tiny, unconscious gesture that I had come to know intimately over nearly 3 decades together. This subtle quirk, far from being flirtatious, had always seemed endearing, a soulful habit that reminded me of countless late-night calls during my business trips. Even when separated by hundreds of miles, I'd picture her doing just this, her fingers absent-mindedly twisting her hair. That thought had often been my solace, easing the loneliness of those nights apart. Through the window, I observed her radiant smile and the warmth in her laughter. Though I couldn't see the sparkle in her eyes from where I stood, I knew it was there. For a moment, admiration swelled within me, but then unease began to creep in. She seemed too absorbed, too animated, as if speaking to someone who meant more to her than just a casual acquaintance. For 45 excruciating minutes, I stood there, unable to look away, watching her share a connection that felt too intimate to exclude me. When she finally ended the call, the dreamy smile lingering on her face felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. Hollow and shaken, I retreated to the family room and switched on the TV, pretending to focus on a local baseball game. A little while later, Joy entered the room. "How long have you been done with work?" she asked casually. "For a while," I responded flatly. "Why didn't you come outside?" she pressed. "You were on the phone." I didn't want to interrupt. I replied with deliberate nonchalance. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said with a dismissive wave. "That was just Steve. We were discussing the Phillips account." I nodded, turning my attention back to the screen, though I could feel her eyes lingering on me, searching for something beneath the surface. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned moments later with a glass of wine, settling on the couch beside me. "What's the score?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Not sure," I admitted. She chuckled lightly. "Do you even know who the Sox are playing?" "The Blue Jays," I answered, my tone still distant. We sat in silence through half an inning until a commercial break prompted her to speak again. "Let's have the kids over for a barbecue this Saturday." She suggested let's have the kids over for a barbecue this Saturday, she said. "Sure," I replied curtly, my tone making it clear I wasn't in the mood for conversation. She attempted to spark some light-hearted talk, but my brief, indifferent answers seemed to deflate her. Finally, she asked, "Chris, is something wrong?" "Nothing," I lied. "You're not yourself tonight. Do you want to talk about it?" she pressed, her voice soft. "No," I said firmly, shutting the door on any further discussion. The silence stretched as the next inning of the game dragged on. In an attempt to break the tension, she stood up and, with practiced ease, pulled off her blue V-neck t-shirt. Smiling playfully, she said, "How about we turn off the TV and head upstairs? I bet I can help you relax." "Not tonight, Joy. I'm not in the mood," I replied flatly. Her grin widened as she leaned closer. "Come on, big guy. Mama needs you," she teased. Meeting her gaze, I said coldly, "What part of not in the mood don't you understand?" Her smile vanished, replaced by a hurt expression. "What's your problem?" "I was just trying to be nice," she said defensively. "Joy, you turn me down at least twice a week. The one time I say no, you act like a spoiled child." Grow up and leave me alone, I snapped. Her eyes narrowed, her glare sharp enough to cut through steel, before she stormed out of the room. For the first time in our marriage, I found myself sleeping in the guest room, or rather, lying awake, staring at the ceiling as my mind churned. By 3 a.m., I knew there was no point in staying in bed. I showered in the kids' old bathroom, then crept into the master bedroom to quietly collect my clothes without waking her. Before heading to work, I installed tracking apps on both her personal and work phones, syncing them to my devices. Despite the pounding headache and an overdose of caffeine, I powered through the day, finalizing a critical presentation ahead of my 2-day business trip that started early the next morning. Tuesday evening was icy between us, with few words exchanged and no semblance of intimacy. By Wednesday morning, I was on my way to the airport for a 7:20 a.m. flight. The day went well. I made significant progress with the client and felt confident about sealing the deal. Yet, every few hours, I checked Joy's location. She was either at home or work, but a gnawing distrust refused to leave me. That evening, as I sat alone in the Marriott lounge, I checked the tracker again. At 7:30 p.m., her location pinged in an upscale neighborhood miles from home, at her boss's house. My suspicions solidified. In the months that followed, our relationship became strained. I kept up a polite but distant front, while Joy made noticeable efforts to repair things. Intimacy, when it occurred, felt forced and hollow. Tracking her movements confirmed my worst fears. She confined her affair to the times I was traveling. Discreet cameras I'd installed revealed her packing bags and heading to Steve's house whenever I was away. Acting on my lawyer's advice, I hired a private investigator. The evidence he uncovered was undeniable. Photos of her and Steve in intimate acts, careless and exposed despite their attempts at secrecy. With irrefutable proof in hand, I began preparing for what I knew was inevitable. On a painful Thursday evening, I made a series of heartbreaking phone calls to our 3 grown children, explaining my decision to divorce their mother. Each call ended with tears as I asked the same question. Do you want me to show you the evidence? None of them could answer. By Friday morning, everything was set in motion. Nearly 3 decades of marriage had reached a devastating conclusion. Later that day, I called Joy. She picked up on the 4th ring. Hey, sweetheart, this is a nice surprise. How are your meetings going? Her voice was warm and cheerful. Hey, love. Meetings are the usual grind. You know how it is. How's work? I asked, keeping my tone casual. I'm just glad it's Friday. It's been such a long week, and I've been counting the hours until you're home. I'm really hoping we can make up for it this weekend, she said with a playful tone. But her subtle avoidance of details didn't escape me. Over the months, I had come to recognize her knack for dodging certain truths. So, what made you call me out of the blue? She asked, her voice light and curious. Out of nowhere, I asked, can I ask you something? Joy hesitated, sensing the gravity in my tone. Of course. What's on your mind? You don't usually call like this, she said, curiosity evident in her voice. I exhaled, steadying myself. Do you like my smile? My smile? What kind of question is that? She asked, sounding both surprised and confused. Of course I do. I love your smile. You've told me that before, I said, a hint of nostalgia creeping in. It was actually the first thing you ever said to me, remember? That night at the frat party. You left your friends, walked right up to me and said, "You've got an amazing smile." Her tone shifted, the warmth giving way to a growing unease. Chris, what's going on? Why are we talking about this? I tried to keep my voice even, though my chest felt heavy. I've always tried to stay optimistic, to focus on the good, even when things got tough. Being with you, raising our 3 kids, it's always been worth it. I told myself that over and over. Her voice softened, almost trembling. That's what I've always admired about you. Your strength, your positivity, your ability to carry us through anything. Chris, I love you for that. I always have. The tears came, unbidden and unstoppable. Despite everything, her love for me still shone through, clear and undeniable. Chris, please, she said, her voice trembling. Tell me what's wrong. I'm begging you. After a long, painful pause, I said quietly, I don't think I can smile anymore. The silence that followed was suffocating, a chasm filled with unspoken fears. Chris, she finally whispered, her voice breaking, you're scaring me. Please, just say what's on your mind. It's too late, Joy, I said, my words measured and deliberate. Talking won't change anything now. No, she cried, her desperation evident. It's never too late for us. We can fix this, Chris. Together, we always can. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. Trust, respect, and love are what hold a marriage together. I know you love me, and I love you too. But trust? Respect? Those are gone, Joy. And without them, there's nothing left to rebuild. She tried to protest, but I pressed on. Look, if you want proof, go to the living room window. What? Chris, what are you talking about? She stammered, panic creeping into her voice. Get up from Steve's lounge chair, walk through his kitchen, and look out the front window, I said firmly. The line went silent. Then her scream pierced the air. Oh, God, no. He knows. Chris knows. From my vantage point, parked 75 feet away in Steve's driveway, I saw her frozen in shock beside him. Steve Davis, her lover, her boss. The glare of the setting sun blurred the finer details, but their silhouettes were unmistakable. I climbed out of the U-Haul truck, backed it up abruptly into the driveway, and slammed on the brakes. Boxes toppled out, scattering across the pavement and the neatly manicured lawn. The sound of fragile items shattering was sharp, echoing the finality of the moment. Among the wreckage were fragments of her great-grandmother's china. Joy stepped out onto the porch, wearing the bikini I had given her for our anniversary, the one she had kept aside for him. Steve followed awkwardly, wrapped in a robe. Neither noticed the unfamiliar car parked nearby until a woman emerged, walking briskly toward them. Joy Harrington, you've been served, the woman announced, handing her a yellow envelope and snapping a quick photo. Turning to Steve, she added, Stephen Davis, you and your firm, Smith, Davis, and Lewis, have also been served. Another photo followed, and she walked away without a backward glance. The two of them stood motionless, their shock palpable. Finally, I broke the silence. My voice carried clearly across the yard. I think we can all agree I deserve better than this. A deceitful, unfaithful wife? No thanks. Joy groaned but stayed silent. Turning to Steve, I added, contact my attorney. Make a generous settlement offer. If you don't, I'll make sure your firm and your reputation are both ruined. Joy, sign the papers. We're done. Without waiting for a response, I climbed back into the truck and drove off, leaving behind their stunned expressions, the wreckage of our past, and the shards of a broken life. And so, my friend, this is where the story ends. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. May brighter days be ahead for us all.